Hi, it's Jeff Chalmers here from discoverdouble-bass.com. That's the home of online learning for the double bass. So if you are new to the instrument or a more experienced player, we've got something to help you on your journey. We're continuing now with our series of questions with the world's greatest double bass players, and it's the jazz legends today. Here's the question. Looking back, what have been some of the most memorable concerts you've played?
Some of my memorable concerts that I can remember were when I was young, playing with the Tito Puente Orchestra and the Eddie Palmieri Orchestra, just playing at these nightclubs that we don't have no longer in New York City. Club Broadway, you know, the festivals of New York City where we would play in the parks and it would be jam-packed, open to the public, and just feeling the reception of the audience as you get on stage and the crowd roaring and trying to get you all revved up. These feelings are things that we take as musicians as we become seasoned. And now that I'm 40, I can look back and I could actually understand how the building blocks of becoming a seasoned bass player and being on stage and understanding what it's like to offer that interaction. And it's a spiritual thing, you know, and these memorable concerts, I mean, there's so many of them, but definitely at a younger age in my life was when I could really remember that feeling of excitement and the first time knowing what that encounter of that reception that you get from an audience is unbelievable. So as a kid, those were my memorable concerts. Those first ones. You will never forget them. And as you get older, you use those, you latch on to those early years so that you could remember what those feelings were.
I've had several memorable concerts, but I'd like to tell you about a couple. This was in maybe the early 80s, 1980s, and I was traveling with the Dexter Gordon Quartet. Dexter Gordon was a fantastic tenor saxophonist. And we were very, very busy. The pianist, George Cables, and the drummer, Eddie Gladden. And I'm still reaping the benefits from that being in that quartet, for sure. And we were busy traveling all over the country and the world, actually. But I remember this one concert. We were in Portland, Oregon, and it was a matinee. We'd been working all week, but the matinee was something special. It was packed, a lot of people, and they really wanted to come hear this quartet. And when you walked into the room, you could feel the electricity already kind of bubbling. It was kind of freaky in a way, exciting. So we began to play, and we played long sets. We in one set would be an hour and a half, at least minimum. Very high energy. But that particular day, we got into that what we call the zone, when you get into the concentration to the point where you lose time. You don't know. I mean, you just do what you do. But I remember going over there, looking back at the group, an out-of-body experience. I had never felt that before, nor since. But I do remember it was kind of scary at first. What is that? But the group was really special. I think the whole environment, all of it combined, made that happen. So that was something that I will always remember. There was also a time when I played with Stan Getz. It was a summer tour, with about 6-week tour of Europe, with Kenny Barron on piano and Victor Lewis on drums, and Stan Getz, of course. And we were playing in Austria, a big jazz festival, huge, thousands of people. And we were next. Chick Corea and his electric band was on. And if you could imagine a stage, a big concert stage, and of course the 9-foot Steinway's there, but the whole stage was full of computers, amplifiers, drums, electric pianos, guitars. I mean, it was just covered with all these instruments, and they played, and it was a pretty fantastic because he was still is quite popular, but that period was pretty amazing, and we had to follow that group. So when they finished, the audience went crazy, and there was about 20 minutes, half hour before we were to go on the same stage. So they had to empty the stage, and then we came back, and it was just the piano and the four of us right in the center of the stage, if you can just imagine that. And it's an acoustic. I had my little amplifier, and there was it. Microphones for the piano and the saxophone. And the moment we started to play, the audience went absolutely nuts. They were so hungry to hear that sound. It was such a vast contrast, and it was amazing. So that taught me a lesson about just do your thing. Whatever that is, you do it. Don't worry about the people before you or after you. Don't dilute your concentration, and just do your thing, and it will work out well. That was pretty special. And then one more, I had my own sextet. I lived in Chicago for a long time, Chicago, Illinois, and they invited me to perform at the Chicago Jazz Festival. And it was actually the first time that I had actually played in a big concert like that with under my own name with my group, and we were playing for 20,000 people, and it was absolutely thrilling, awesome, you know. So those are strong memories for me.
You know, all the concerts that I do, they're all special. They're all free lessons for me. So what I do, I thank the band for allowing me to give them a free harmony lesson, and I thank the creator for the opportunity to show these guys what it's all about.
So some of the most memorable concerts that I've played, one concert I played when I was very young, probably 16 years old, but I got a chance to play. It was at the Detroit Institute of Arts with Hank Jones, Thad Jones, Roy Brooks, Curtis Fuller, who else was on it? Kenny Burrell. It was a great gig. I was way out of my league. You know, I don't even remember how I played, but it was just such big shoes. Another gig that I played when I first started playing with Bromberg Marcellus, or actually it was before I was in his band, but he called me to do a recording. This recording called Renaissance, and it had Tony Williams and Kenny Kirkland on it, and that was great playing with those guys. But the first night of we did 3 nights in the club, and then we did 3 nights in the studio in LA, and Kenny Kirkland couldn't make the first night, so Bradford called Herbie Hancock to make it. So I was playing with Herbie and Tony, 2 of my idols, along with Bradford, you know, who sounded great. And yeah, those were magical gigs. Just the memory of it is so amazing. You know, I wish I would have played better, but it was a great experience, and it definitely developed me. So that's a couple of them.
Before I got the gig with Chicken around 1985, I did get to play Carnegie Hall for the first time in my life with Hubert Laws in 1983-ish. That was amazing. All the gigs with Chick, all the many festivals we played in for decades, with the electric band, the acoustic band with the trio with Dave Weckl, and also there was a quartet with Bob Berg and Gary Novak. Those were incredible shows. And the last 20 years with the Wayne Shorter Quartet have been just mind-blowing experiences, playing all over the world, being mentored by a genius. You know, you could say that I've had many geniuses in my life, and they showed me a lot of things. Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, Freddie Hubbard, Wayne Shorter, unbelievable, brilliant genius. All those concerts. I mean, so many concerts. I can't really single out things. Although, again, we played with Wayne at Carnegie Hall with the Orpheus Chamber Orchestra. That was pretty major, really exciting.
Well, certainly the town hall concert with Bill Evans was an extraordinary experience. We'd been playing week after week after week together, the same material. So we were well prepared. There's a real comfort in performing the same piece over and over, getting used to the form, getting comfortable with the likelihood of how other people that you play with are going to approach it, and still having enough spontaneity so that it can be a little different each time. And I think when we walked out on the stage, the recording of that concert is available, the town hall concert on Verve, and the first thing on the recording is I Should Care. And it is exactly what happened, exactly as it happened. I come out, I check my tuning, and we play the piece. And since we'd been playing it all the time, even though it was a hall full of a couple of thousand people, it didn't feel all that different from playing in clubs. So we were comfortable. So that part of it was memorable. And when we finished the first half of the concert, the trio part, I put my bass down and walked off the stage, and Rudy Van Gelder, the recording engineer, who was in general not a particularly demonstrative guy, as I walked off, he opened up his arms and we embraced in a gesture of relief and a sense of mutual accomplishment. I'd played, Bill had played, Arnie Wise had done his job, and Rudy had gotten it all on tape. So it was a nice moment, and I'll always remember that about Rudy, whom most people think of as this kind of hands off my equipment guy, don't touch my recording, don't touch my microphone, and that was a part of him too. But this is my memory of him is this one warm moment. So that was one. Another one was a concert we did at the ORTF Radio Concert Hall in Paris, I think in 1965, with an absolutely enraptured audience. And those recordings also exist in various pirated versions, and they may come out soon on Resonance Records. George Clayton and his company are working on getting legitimate tapes of that, and that's an extraordinarily high-level concert performance. Other times, there have been good nights in clubs where you're just relaxed and comfortable with the people around you and you play well. Generally speaking, I think people play about as well as they're prepared to play at any given time in their development. And they may experience it subjectively as if there's a wide variation in level. But I think the variation is not as wide as objectively, it's not as wide as you think it is. So by the time I'd been playing with Bill Evans night after night after night, week after week after week, the performances were good. At the Golden Circle in the club in Stockholm, where we were there for 2 weeks, and we had a particularly intense audience, largely made up of, or significantly made up of Swedish performers, singers, actors whom we knew, who came in every night for the last set. That was another intense experience. We've got to play for those people again. They were here last night. We did it already. So those are some that I particularly remember. I can tell you a couple of ones that weren't so good too, but that's another story.
It's really difficult to make a list of the most memorable gigs of my career so far. I do remember most of the gigs that I've done, and I use that information to inform my practicing, to show me those things that I need to continually work on. I think what's interesting is to think about why some gigs are more memorable than others in a positive way. And I think this comes down to the values that the collective group of musicians hold together, including listening and empathy and reaction and pushing each other to places that maybe they weren't expecting they might go to. And with these values intact, I think the potential for magical moments to happen on stage is much greater. And inversely, if somebody comes to the gig with an agenda or with ears half open, they're kind of shutting out those opportunities. What I've found over the years is the practicing that I do, the more technical practicing of really learning the instrument, allows me to be more awake on the gig so that I'm not so self-involved when I'm playing, and that I can open myself up to these magical moments and allow them to happen.
It's hard to choose what would be my most memorable concerts, but I'd have to narrow it down to just a few. The first would be the first time when I played with Mr. Kenny Barron, and this was at a time when I was just out of school, and I remember being so excited yet quite nervous to play with someone that I had listened to for a long time. You know, I knew his records so well, his work with Charlie Hayden, Night in the City, People Time with Stan Getz, as well as Kenny Barron's own music, Live at Bradley's with Ray Drummond, and his work with Sphere. So I remember playing in Minneapolis at the Dakota, and Kenny called Body and Soul, and I'd listened to that version with Charlie Hayden on Night in the City so many times, and I remember just thinking, oh wow, I'm playing with Kenny Barron, and being quite nervous. But I looked over and, you know, Kenny's aura was so relaxed, and what was coming out of the piano and out of his fingers, it was just so beautiful, such a beautiful relaxed touch that I had kind of no choice but to just kind of let go of my ego space and just really be in the moment. And it was a really memorable gig for me, and I had a great time.
You know, I'm one of the luckiest guys on the planet, and I realize it. I played a lot of concerts, made a lot of recordings with fabulous musicians, and I feel privileged and blessed every time, because other people could do a wonderful job in that chair, but I happen to be there, and I'm loving it and grateful to be there. So I played with a lot of memorable concerts with people like, oh gosh, Milt Jackson, with Monty Alexander, with Count Basie, with Carmen McRae, with the Amsterdam Philharmonic Orchestra, with Henry Mancini, with, oh gosh, recordings with people like McCoy Tyner, and with, you know, just, it's a very long list, and I'm so happy. Also with Yo-Yo Ma and Paul McCartney, and so I'll just share one of the concert stories. There was a time in Count Basie's early days, in the 30s, for instance, 30s and 40s, he had playing with him a bass player named Walter Page and a drummer named Joe Jones. To not confuse him with Philly Joe Jones, who played with Miles Davis and a lot of other people you probably know. They called him Old Man Joe Jones, Old Man Joe Jones. So it was Count Basie on piano, Freddie Green on guitar, Walter Page on bass, and Joe Jones on drums. And they called that. That was such a dynamic, cohesive unit that fired up the Count Basie band and made all those great hit records. Such a great rhythm section. They called it the All-American Rhythm Section. So now, fast forward, it's 1977, 78, something like that, and I'm in Count Basie's band, and I look around at one of our concerts, and I see Mr. Basie toward the end of the concert grab the microphone and say, "Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to invite to the stage somebody who used to play with me back in the good old days. He's here with us. Please welcome Joe Jones." So Joe Jones came up and we played a Count Basie hit called "Jumpin' at the Woodside." And I never will forget that feeling of, in 78, somewhere around there, 77, playing with Joe Jones, Count Basie, Walter Page, and me. I was sitting in the All-American Rhythm Section, playing one of their hits. I had goosebumps from the count off to the cutoff. That's one really memorable story. I've got many, but that's a cool one for me.
Man, I'm 59 years old. I've been doing this since I was, I started touring with Stan Getz when I was, actually 18 is when I joined his band. I've been doing this a very long time. I've been blessed by playing with so many great players throughout my career and my life. It's impossible for me to pick out really one or anything. Well, playing with Herbie Hancock the first time was a life-altering experience because he is just a genius, and his depth and his knowledge of music and his instrument is just overwhelming. I felt like I was in the Boy Scouts. I mean, it was amazing playing with somebody who had that kind of mastery over his instrument and music. That was just a phenomenal experience. But I've been fortunate. I look back at my resume and some of the people I played with, and I've had such great times with so many of them, and they all have something to say, and they all inspire me, and they all kick your butt, which is great. So it would be hard for me to just pick one. But playing with Elvin Jones and Hank Jones together, that was pretty cool because that never really happened. And as I grew up playing drums as well, so it's just like, man, it's Elvin Jones. And I'd be playing, and it looks like, that's Elvin Jones. It's not somebody trying to be Elvin Jones. That's Elvin Jones. I mean, guys like that were incredibly inspiring for me. So it's kind of all of it. I don't want to say it's all a blur, but it all adds up. You can have such great experiences playing. You don't have to play a major gig. You don't have to play a major festival. It doesn't need to be a major concert. It just could be a great night of music, and that is something that will stick with you. So I've been very fortunate to have a lot of those experiences in and outside the studio as well, making records. Sometimes the magic is there, sometimes the tragic is there. But, there's just a lot of great experiences, and I'm very, very fortunate that I've had those experiences, and all of those experiences help make me a better musician and a better bass player. So for that, it's phenomenal.
So what did you think? Did you enjoy the video? If you did, there's a really easy way to let us know. Hit that like button, and then of course leave a comment. Let's keep the conversation going. Let us know about some of your most memorable concerts that you've either played at or attended. Okay, we'll see you in the next video.